Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliette Clark, and today we have one of our authors on who was brave enough to release 2 books at once. She actually put together a killer book and a companion journal with it, and I think you're really going to love what she has to say. But before we get started, remember to go over and grab your free subscription of Breakthrough Author Magazine. You can find that at breakthroughauthormagazine.com. We have expanded this year. There are a lot of great nuggets in there for coaches, authors, and speakers. It's mainly still authors, but you know what? There's just so much there that I think everyone would benefit from it. Also, we have some new courses. One of the new courses we put together this year that we priced at $97 because it is really the first step to everything. And we want it to at a price point that everyone can grab it. You can go over to buildyourauthoravatar.com. This is really the market research that you need to do in depth to figure out who you're talking to and what messaging resonates with them. So whether you're writing a book, whether you're building a funnel, whatever it is, this is really the foundation that you need to build upon, because marketing is always a guess. So you're putting this all together and then you're validating it with your content. So today's guest is Gretchen Hydo, and Gretchen holds the highest designation of Master Certified Coach through the International Coaching Federation. She's a keynote speaker, a facilitator, and a trainer. Considered by many to be one of Los Angeles's top coaches, she specializes in guiding individuals and organizations to make high-level transformations by breaking the rules, shedding their secrets, and changing their lives. Her 10-stage secret breaking system helps people step away from their default legacy and lean into a created future. As the author of the book, Break Free from Your Dirty Little Secret, a 10-stage secret breaking system to a new you, she is dedicated to helping women break free from lies, their false self-whispers about who they are, what they've done, and step into bigger living. She lives with her family in Los Angeles. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. This is one of the few books, when she brought it to us, I started reading through it like I always do to see if it met all the criteria to take her on as a client. And I have to say that I literally stopped and said, can you give me a minute? Because I want to do these exercises. It's really, really amazing. She not only released this book, but at the same time, a companion journal titled Tell Me Your Secret, or Tell Your Secret. Sorry about that. So stay tuned. Here's Gretchen. Gretchen, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you said yes, because we got a lot to weave through here.
Super excited to be here. Thanks for asking.
Oh, no problem. So break free from your dirty little secrets. This sounds like such sort of a tease book, but also when you get into it, it is really an emotional book.
It is.
What prompted you? Like, what did you do that said, oh my gosh, I need to sit down and I need to write this and I need to help others with this?
Such a good question. You know, here's the thing. I've helped so many women with their secrets to really break free from the shame. And one day I was walking in the park and I got this download from God, and God said, you need to write this book. And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, no, you do. And I was like, well, okay. Right across the street is this little taco stand. And I went and I sat down and it just all came out, all of the bullet points of what it needed to be. And it was interesting because you're right, it is kind of a salacious teaser title, but then you get into it and it's such an emotional journey. But I knew that due to some of my own story and the secrets that I've had and the shame that I've carried about those things, that there were millions of other women who had secrets just like that. And that if we can break free from the weight of those secrets, we can lean into the life that we're meant to lead instead of this adjacent living that most women find themselves in.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I shared with the audience in the intro that I read usually the first two chapters of every book when they come in. I couldn't read every one of them, but I kind of look for editing and, is this a good book or does it need to go to a book developer? And I think I actually said, can you give me a few more days? Because I feel like I really want to weave through this and work it. So I just want to share with everybody, as I was doing this, I was sort of making a list of what those secrets were, because that's sort of where you start. And I love the vulnerability where you share your secret, but you also share some other secrets. And I actually remember hitting the reply button and saying, really? This is a thing?
Yes.
So like, where did you just, I love the transparency of your own secret, because I learned a lot about you, but I also learned how incredibly vulnerable you are to tell those things. Do you want to share any of that?
Yeah, and thanks for saying that about the vulnerability. So here's what happened in my journey, and all of us have something. I found out for myself that one of the ways that I tend to cope is to get bigger than others, bully them back into place, those sorts of things. And the secret that you're talking about, get ready, listeners, is that I had a broken foot. I was in my very early 20s. My husband and I are at church, not just any church. Bel Air church, right? Fancy, fancy, fancy. My husband leaves to go upstairs where our friends sit, and I feel abandoned. I'm sitting there exposed, not feeling good enough with my broken foot in a fancy dress, trying to get along with quote unquote church people. And I just feel really less than. My fight or flight response came in, and all of the stories about who I am. You're not good enough. You're really poor, because I grew up not very socially, economically abundant. And it's just there. And I'm standing there in this lobby. By the time he came down, I'm furious. I've created stories. He's abandoned me. He left me. He doesn't care about me. He was gone for like 7 minutes. Okay. So this is really that kind of thinking that happens. And what do? I lunge for him with my crutches, chase him as if I don't have a broken foot. We get to the car somehow with me cussing at him in this church. Remember, Bel Air Presbyterian Church, thousands of people go to each service. So people are watching. And then I take out the key and I put it up to his neck as if I'm going to stab him. So it's like crazy, right? It's crazy. But here's the thing. I was a well put together woman. I had a job. We owned a condo in Los Angeles. I'm married. And yet I couldn't get a hold of my emotions. And for a long time, I felt really shameful about that. And that day that God told me in the park that I was going to help other people, I had already done some work. I had already created the secret breaking system. I'd already walked some women through it and had seen the shame be lifted when they could go through the process of, how did you become a secret keeper? What were those coping mechanisms that you learned as a kid? What was the wiring that got wired that really was faulty, that it's not really the correct messages? And then what's the core feeling that you're running towards all of the time? For me, it was always to be loved and to feel secure. Now, stabbing someone at a church does not give you that feeling, right? It just doesn't. That's not okay. However, it was the same feeling of like, just notice me. Do you see me? Am I good enough? Do you see me? And so in this system, I really walk people through any secret that they have. And the truth is, it's not much of a secret because people saw me, so that's the first thing when it comes to secrets. Half the time, other people really know, like it was exposed. There were a lot of people there. But the second part of the secret is the story that you tell yourself about who you are because of it. And that's what we carry with us. And that's the piece that I didn't want people to know I was violent or that I flew off the handle. The story was maybe I wasn't trustworthy with my own emotions. I better be careful. Don't set her off. And so that keeps us in place. And then the third part is, well, how did it become that? And the truth is, the way it became that is I grew up in a family that had a lot of addiction issues. Police were at our house often. Violence towards others, not ever towards us kids, was the equivalent of love and protection. And so things get jumbled. And so through this process, I really take people through their own jumble and make it a straight line so that you can see, well, see, you did this because of this, and then create new ways and new systems in your internal regulating system to cope.
Yes, yes. And it's so funny that you said that about not knowing, because a couple of years ago, I connected with an old childhood friend. And she said to me, okay, I'm going to tell you, like, I know you don't know, but I came out, I'm gay. And I laughed. I was like, Kathy, we've all known you were gay since you were like 5, but it's that kind of thing where she thought none of us knew. And she's like, you're the fourth person who's told me that I've shared that with.
And so that's the part, right? We think it's a big secret that no one knows, but oftentimes people really do know. They do know, but we're carrying this narrative. It's more like your secret narrative about yourself. And then because of the narrative, there's different choices that you won't make because of who you think you are.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, as I was going through the notebook, I jotted down 3 or 4 secrets right away. And then I walked away and it started like coming up. This big one that I have started coming up, and I was getting really uncomfortable. And I finally sat down the next day and I was like, the other ones are frivolous. This is the one you need to connect with. So it's really interesting too. I think it's really, you have to check your gut and see, oh, am I throwing these other ones out because they don't really need work, or is it this big one that needs work? So,
and what I found with that too is sometimes people have to throw out the ones that seem silly or small first, kind of like as a practice run before they can access that larger one.
mm-hmm. And I think I even shared with you that I went to an energy healer that week. I called her and I'm like, I need some help here. So very, very interesting. So you are incredibly brave, and you are actually publishing 2 books at once, which is, I'm sure, really stressful. But tell us about the journal, the companion journal that you put together with this, because it's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you. The whole thing through this book, I really had a vision for what I wanted everything to look like. And women, we like beautiful things that are elegant but practical. And so the reason I created the workbook to go with it as a companion is I wanted people to have a safe place to keep the dissection of their secret all together, not on one little piece of paper here and then another scrap paper there, so that they could go back with any secret that they have and rinse and repeat. All of the steps are there, all of the exercises are there, and it's
Mm-hmm.
meant to be something you can use again and again with the prompts. But to take that one secret, the one that you were talking about, even the one that I'm talking about, your big one, through, and to have it all in one place, it gives you a level of safety, and just here it is, it's all right here. And I wanted it to be easy to follow, and that's why I created it side by side to use with the book.
Yeah, yeah. So when you get into the vulnerability, this is really going back to childhood stuff, because you referenced childhood. I had a very similar childhood, and I will share you guys with mine. I've been divorced. I'm a horrible dater, so I just don't date much anymore, which, by the way, this actually propelled me to join Matt Boggs' program. I just did. I signed it on Tuesday to get involved with that program and say, okay, I've been avoiding this for a really long time. It's time to re-engage. So thank you for that.
Yes.
But when you're going through it, I think it always goes back for your childhood. And there was something you shared in the book, which I thought was so interesting, that, I had both parents that were like that. They were really messy, a lot of addiction. You had a very spiritual mother, because we had the whole thing that went back and forth with the teepee. And I remember reading it and imagining my family with someone who was spiritual and going, oh my gosh, like that must have been like 100 times worse than just having 2 addicted parents.
Yeah, so it's interesting when it comes to that with the spirituality. So my mom would go, both of my parents exposed us to different beliefs. My mom would take us to like the Indian sweat lodges, and we would go, and it's very hot and smelly and whatever else. And I guess it's great for some people and they like it, but when you're 9, you don't really like it. It's just weird, right? It's just weird. And so she was very kind though in that, and for her, she was going through her own spiritual journey at the time and trying to find her own connection. She'd been raised Catholic, and she no longer really subscribed to that. And so this was the way that she went. While my dad always has had Christianity. And, he gave it to me a different way, where I share in the book that there was a time he had just gotten out of jail, and he said to me, look, you really should get baptized with your brothers, and so that you can go to heaven and have a relationship with Jesus. And I was like, wait, you mean you think you're going to heaven, but I'm not, me and all of my 13-year-old glory? And he said, well, yeah, you have to accept Jesus Christ if you're going to heaven, and I want to make sure that you're okay. And I said, if you're going and I'm not going, God clearly has an organizational problem, because that's how it felt. It was just such crazy
Yeah.
making with what we were seeing in the behavior. But I did go in the bathroom and read the sinner's prayer, because I am a girl that likes to have, all of the options covered just in case. And the funny part of that, I think it's no mistake that the stabbing happens, the stabbing that's a non-stabbing, because it didn't actually go through and I didn't go through with it, but nor would my husband let me, happens at a church, right? At a spiritual center. And it's just
Mm.
interesting the way that it's all there. And then what we come to on our own about spirituality and God, and whether it's religion or not. But yeah, I think that there definitely is a component there in the healing, that call it whatever you want, but something's going to need to be connected outside of your own good ideas.
Yes, yes. And I feel like for those of you out there listening, even if you don't feel like you have a secret today, this is one of those books that you go buy and maybe you put on a shelf. And the reason I say that is, I remember when I got divorced, going through horrible problems, somebody gave me this divorce book, and I just stuck it on the shelf. Like, I never looked at it. But then there was that one time about a year later where I got triggered, and I went and I took it down. It was right there, and I started doing the work. So if you don't think in your immediate world you have a problem, or you sort of have an inkling you do, but you're not willing to deal with it, this is the kind of book you still should buy. And if you don't read it, just let it sit there and walk by it every day until you're ready. Because I feel like it's that sort of thing. I was ready, but if I hadn't been, it would have been something that I would have gone looking for at some point.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say about that. A lot of us don't think that we're secret keepers, but if you really check your private thoughts, do you really want people to know everything that you're thinking? Probably not. That alone is a secret.
Yeah, but mine's because I'm sarcastic. Mine's more like, if you knew what was going on in my head when I'm talking to you, you would never talk to me again. No,
I get
not you right now, but I've been in those
yeah,
conversations where
definitely.
oh God, I can't roll my eyes, and now I have a headache from trying not to roll my eyes.
Sure, sure.
So describe the secret keeping, what you see as the things that happen in our lives because we're not willing to look at them.
So it's interesting that you asked this question. I was just coaching a client around this. Secrets are like a splinter that's festering under the skin and poking to get out. And they hurt, right? You touch them and it's tender, it's pokey, and maybe they're getting a little bit of pus around them. Here's what our life looks like. We get sick spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Sometimes you have headaches. Maybe you develop colitis. Maybe there's a stomach issue, or a stress issue, or anxiety, or depression, or any of those things. That can really show up. That can be your mental aspect. That can be the physical aspect. And then our spiritual aspect, when you're walking around feeling like, this is it, I really thought there would be something more, or you're feeling like, wow, I would like to try this other thing, but people like me with my kind of past can't. That's how the secret makes you spiritually sick. And it keeps us in these boundaries, right? Because now we have this emotional, mental block. Now we've got a physical ailment. Now we've got a spiritual block, and we get smaller and smaller and smaller while the secret just bubbles up right under the surface. So it's important to do this kind of work, just to take a look, your own inventory, so that you no longer have to walk with the weight of the past on you.
Yes. And not only that, you talked about how yours manifested in this triggered anger, but I think you could almost interpret that too as self-sabotage, because in that moment you felt not worthy of your husband's love, or however that manifested. And then you went and did something that potentially, had he not loved you, he would have said,
Yeah.
we're done.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
there's a lot of that self-sabotage that goes on. So what I got from your book too is that really looking into your patterns. And I tend to do this a lot with my family and myself because I have childhood patterns from my own family, or I've seen patterns that I don't want to repeat. So what would you say about that? Do you think that's really the time to start looking, or do you think there's another area you should look in?
I think that it's really important to look at our childhood conditioning, because any coping mechanism that you use, it was given to you. It's what you thought would work best so that you could receive your core feeling of either feeling liked, loved, valued, secure. And we pick it up from our parents. If you live in a house, if you lived in a house growing up that was really volatile, maybe you became the peacekeeper, maybe you became invisible, maybe to be seen you had to get bigger than. However it is, it's just coping. And so that becomes our patterns, and the patterns we outgrow. They no longer serve us in our adult selves when we get to actually sit in the space of, I no longer have to be in a survival mindset. And it's all subconscious. That's the other piece. No one is consciously walking around thinking, I'm just trying to survive, not usually anyway. And we just pick it up, it's that past, it's the thing. And even for those of us who didn't grow up traumatically, that there wasn't some deep, dark thing that happened in our family of origin, there were still coping mechanisms that you learned. I was just with someone who her little girl kept saying she was sorry, and she was maybe 7. And finally I said to her, why do you need to be sorry? And she said, because nice girls are sorry. And I thought, how interesting. What an interesting thing to pick up. What an interesting message. I can only imagine all of the secrets she's going to create about being a nice girl and being sorry.
Yes, absolutely. And I sort of see the patterns just from an addiction space. I feel like patterns are sort of not manifestations of addiction, but just like addictions, they get worse and worse with every adventure. So they keep manifesting themselves bigger and bigger, almost like that alcoholic who has to hit rock bottom. I feel like you sort of have to do that with your patterns as well. And that's where this digging out that you're doing in these books is so essential.
Well, and just like you said, with getting to rock bottom, that incident with my husband at the church was the rock bottom. Before that, I had angry outbursts with my words, or cutting remarks or those sorts of things, but never had it been physical. And so it does just get bigger and bigger with the ways that we cope in our plight to feel a certain feeling, to feel the value, to feel the love. And it doesn't make any sense because it's so counterintuitive to the way that a person actually is going to get to feel those things. But we have to hit the rock bottom and then be willing to look at it so that we can build again.
Yeah, absolutely. So break free from your dirty little secrets and tell your secrets, right? I
Yes.
don't know why that just flew right out of my head. I've been working on it all morning.
Yeah.
Tell your secrets. They're going to be in stores February 1st and available to buy. They'll be on the online distributors February 1st and released on February 28th. So Gretchen, if we want to contact you in between, if we want to find you, we want to work with you because you do a lot of really great work. Where do we find you at?
You can go to my website, gretchenhydo.com.
Okay, fantastic. And Hydo is spelled Hydo.
Yes.
If you're looking, so don't do the Hido. Hydo.
Hydo.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me.